monetary policy statement and have not varied for a number of meetings now. But under those three criteria, really the situation points towards inflation settling at our 2% targets. We can come back to the path, but this is what we are seeing, and that is what has predicated the cut that we made today. Now, you asked me about my future, which is far less important than the future of the economy and the future of our monetary policy, rest assured. But I can very firmly tell you that I have always been, and I'm fully determined to deliver on my mission, and I'm determined to complete my term. So I regret to tell you that you're not about to see the back of me.
Next question goes to Annette Weisbach of CNBC. Annette, please.
Hi, President Lagarde. I have a question. When I read through the communique today, I have the feeling that you're quite confident on the economy despite all the uncertainties. So is that a right assessment? And at the same time, you're also quite confident that inflation is under control. So does that bring me to the right conclusion that we're almost done when it comes to rate cutting? And then a question on your thinking about the boost from the fiscal space, because clearly it will take time until we'll see that materializing on the economy and also probably on inflation. So just to also understand, why are you so confident that this is actually supporting the economy also in the shorter term, despite all the uncertainties? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your question. We have hardly revised our growth numbers. So the only year where we have slightly revised is 2026, and by 0.1%. So we have confirmed our projected growth rate as per our projection of last March at 0.9% for 2025. And that was certainly reinforced by the number we had for Q1. So I mentioned the 0.3 Q1 number, which was, as you know, revised from an initial 0.4. I would not exclude that there be further revision of that number on the upside. Now, this is attributable to multiple factors. It's improved consumption, it's improved investment, but more importantly, it's the buildup of inventory or anticipated purchases and therefore sales in fear and anticipation of the tariffs. So that Q1 is, of course, very peculiar, well, very particular, more than peculiar, and is clearly giving momentum to the growth that we are seeing and anticipating for 2025. But again, I would not exclude that number of 0.3 be revised upward, given the volume that we are seeing being traded out of some countries in particular. But we are not revising 27, and we are very marginally revising 2026 because there is a carryover, number one, and because we believe that the impact of tariff, if and when they materialize, on the export that we have towards the United States, which I remind you is only 17% of our total exports outside from the Euro area and European countries, will impact predominantly on 26 and will then be significantly offset by the expected investment in both military equipment and construction, or infrastructure, if you will, particularly out of some countries. So our assessment is that that will have a bearing on 27 predominantly, some in 26, but predominantly in 27. So you have this offset between the two. So are we confident? I think that would be far-fetched, because we are in a good place. As I said, I think we are well positioned as you know, after that 25 basis point rate cut and with the rate path as it is, we are in a good place. We will face uncertainty. We do not know what the outcome of the negotiations will be between the various partners. We don't know the level of retaliation that might be decided, which incidentally is not included in our baseline, as you will see published later on. And as a result, we have to be prepared, and we will be assessing meeting by meeting data as they come in. But, you know, as I said again, we are well positioned at the moment. And the path of inflation that we see certainly returns to 2% in 2027. So we start from a place where we have inflation for 2025 at 2%. It goes below target in 26 for reasons that have predominantly to do with the price of energy and the value of the euro. Because as you know, it's based on our current assumption of those prices now. And that's what explains these numbers.
Next question, Francesco Canepa of Reuters. Francesco, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you said that the current level of rates leaves you in a good position.
Mm-hmm.
Are we to understand that as an indication that you're done cutting interest rates? Or if I can rephrase the question in another way, what would you need to see for you to cut rates again?
Again, we are in a good position. And we are in a good position on the basis of the current rate path and with the 25 basis point cuts that we decided, so that we can face the uncertainties that are coming our way. But as you have heard in the monetary policy statement, we will decide meeting by meeting on the basis of data. And we will assess, as and when data come in, whether or not that position is secure in order to deliver on our 2% medium-term target. What I'm saying today is that we are in that good position.
Next question to Aude Kersulek of BFM Business. Aude, please.
Thank you, President Lagarde, for taking my question. First question, would you say the monetary stance has now shifted to neutral, or is it still restrictive, even slightly? And second question, some countries are facing higher debt and may struggle to attract investors. At what point does that become a concern for the ECB in terms of policy transmission and financial stability? Thank you.
Well, thank you for your two questions. We have not discussed this wonderful concept of the neutral rate on the occasion of this meeting. And I think that we all know well that as we are getting closer to that zone, we need to be particularly attentive. We need to be confident in our resolve to deliver with the appropriate monetary policy our medium-term 2% target. But we have not discussed that neutral rate. And I alluded to that at our last press conference. You know, the neutral rate is predicated on the absence of shock. Great equilibrium, no shock. Well, I wish there was no shock. But we have just nearly concluded a cycle of monetary policy that dealt with a series of shocks. Pandemic, war in Ukraine, energy crisis. And I think we have done that decently well. Inflation is at target 2% medium term. We are currently around 2%. Expectations are well anchored around 2%. And those elements that I told you repeatedly over the few last conferences was of concern to us, namely inflation on services, evolution of wages, evolution of profit. Those three elements are coming really in line with what our projections were in order to deliver on our 2% medium-term target. For the moment, we are facing significant uncertainty. You will read in the material, in the monetary policy statement, I think we quote uncertainty 9 or 10 times. It abounds. There is plenty of that. And clearly we are trying to improve our game as much as we can in order to anticipate, measure, caliber, but it's proving obviously quite difficult. And that's the reason you will be not only receiving our projection exercise, but also the scenarios which encapsulate some of the channels of transmission to growth and inflation. Some of them, not all of them. In particular, I would mention one that we discussed quite extensively during the Governing Council, which is the disruption of the supply chain. That is not included in any of our scenarios.
And the next question goes to Svein Iljan of the Bulgarian newswire GETTR.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
I hope all your colleagues have welcomed you to the circle.
I hope to. According to the ECB convergence report published Wednesday, Bulgaria is ready to join the Eurozone on January 1st next year. What do you expect to be the effects of Bulgaria's accession to the Euro area? And will the currency zone be stronger with a likely new member state?
So first of all, I would like to congratulate Bulgaria, the Bulgarian people, and welcome them. This is not yet a completed decision-making process because, as you know, while the Commission and us have validated under the convergence report that the criteria are met, the European Council still has to approve. So I don't want to prejudge what the European Council will decide, but there is a very strong likelihood that Bulgaria will become our 21st member around the table. And we are delighted that the circle gets larger, and we will be looking forward to the Bulgarian contributions, both in terms of intellectual input, economic analysis, monetary policy determination, and as soon as the decision is final with the European Council, as you probably know, we will welcome for several meetings before January 1st, the Bulgarian representative at the table of the Governing Council in order to sort of facilitate and do the onboarding properly, and so that we can also get to know a new colleague. I also hope that the Bulgarian people will value the solidity of the Euro area league. I also hope that the Bulgarian people will value the solidity of the Euro area, the solidity of the currency that we have. Some of you have probably noticed that the supportive judgment of the Europeans has gone up and is now at 83%. So you have 83% of the Europeans, based on a survey that is done on a regular basis, 83% actually value and appreciate the euro as their currency. So I hope we can together do everything we can so that Bulgarians can also appreciate the value and the shield impact that the euro constitutes for new members.
And the next question goes to Stefan Rekius of Handelsblatt. Stefan, please.
Thank you very much for the floor. First question is, some analysts have entertained the idea that you could skip July to make concession to those governing council members who have already become reluctant to cut rates further. Could you walk us through today's deliberations in this light? And my second question is, you have been reluctant to declare victory over inflation for quite some time. So is this the right time for a victory lap? And if not, why?
Yeah, victory laps are always nice, but there is always another battle. So, as I said, I think that with today's cut, and the current level of interest rates, number one, I think we are getting to the end of a monetary policy cycle that was responding to compounded shocks, including COVID, including the war in Ukraine, the illegitimate war in Ukraine, and the energy crisis. But of course, we are now into a different time with different players, with different partners, with different policies. And we will continue to analyze and assess and measure and make sure that we deliver on our 2% medium-term target. This is in a way the thing that's certain. You should not doubt for a second our determination to deliver with the appropriate monetary policy the 2% medium-term target. What we're seeing currently with this, 2% projected inflation for 2025, around 2% for 2027, and 1.6 in 26, caused predominantly with our current assumption on the price of energy and the value of the euro. We have a good path to this target, and we'll make sure that we I don't mean to use the word oscillate or navigate, but it will be, close navigation around our target. That's where we have to be and want to be.
This concept of the direction of travel, which you earlier used in this rate cycle, your today's remarks suggest to me that the direction of travel now probably is more a sideways movement rather than kind of a downward as it was by the end of the year. Would that be the right takeaway from your today's remarks? And my second question again is on these remarks by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. Some people suggest that the disclosure that you considered leaving the ECB early could undermine your ability to do your job properly, as you might be seen as a lame duck. What would be your response to those concerns? Thanks.
Thank you for your two questions. On the first one, the reason I used the direction of travel concept was when we were really at a distance from our medium-term 2% target. So to talk about the direction of travel, when we have our medium-term 2% target in sight, sustainably so, when underlying inflation is not budging. So for those in doubt, headline inflation in 2026 is clearly oil and gas and the value of the euro, which we assess at the time when we cut off the period when we do when staff does its assessment. And underlying inflation, core inflation, this is hardly moving, and it's at around our target. So there's no point talking about the direction of travel. There's no point talking about sideways. What I'm saying is that we will be determined to deliver that 2% medium-term target. We will be looking at all data that come in. We will be deciding meeting by meeting, and we will constantly assess and reassess how we are delivering on this 2% medium-term target. As to your second question, I will repeat what I have said. I have always been driven by my mandate, and I'm determined to complete my term. Period.
And the next question goes to Isabella Bufacchi of Il Sole 24 Ore. Isabella, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. I have two questions. One is on APP and PEP, in the sense that the ECB no longer reinvests the principal payments of these portfolios. Would the Governing Council have to put on hold quantitative tightening if it were to decide for a pause in interest rate cuts? Even if these no longer investments have a very small impact, keeping interest rates unchanged during QT is somehow a restrictive stance, as the ECB is draining liquidity. And my second question is on the role of the euro. The governor of the Bank of Italy, Fabio Panetta, warned in his speech on the 30th of May, in his concluding remarks, that the recent US depreciation raised important questions about the future structure of the international monetary system and the dominant role of the US dollar as both a reserve and a trade.
I apologize. I'm going to reset my soundboard here. There's an issue with the earpiece.
Special experience in the United States. What do you think is happening now with the dollar?
Some of you would like to hear me talk about pause, hold, or whatever. I just can repeat myself that we are currently well positioned to navigate the uncertainties of the next months. And I think the risk of inconsistency anyway is not, sorry, the risk of inconsistency of QT associated with interest rate policy, which is our main tool, is probably less critical in the event that I'm not confirming here now of a pause than it is in the event of a cut. So I don't see that, but neither do I say anything about future decisions, which would only be predicated on major shocks that we are not seeing at the moment. Now, on the role of the euro, I highly regard the speech that was given by my colleague and friend, Governor Panetta, Gentile Governatore, right? And I happen to be very much on the same page as he is. I gave a speech in Berlin about 10 days ago now at the Hertie School of the Jacques Delors Institute, in which I tried to identify the key pillars that would need to be consolidated and further developed if the euro was to play a critical role as an international reserve currency. And my conclusion is that there is an opportunity that is opening now in order to strengthen the role of the euro as an international currency, as to take it further towards possibly the international reserve currency of choice. But my conclusion is that it is not going to be granted to us. It should not be taken as a given. And it will require, in particular, that member states, the Commission, the European Council make very substantive decisions that will have to do with consolidating the economic and geopolitical role of Europe, that will simplify, streamline, and develop the role of the capital market union in particular, the saving and investment union, if you will, but particularly the capital market union. And we'll have to continue to sustain the effort of making Europe a place where the rule of law is respected, where a contract is a contract, so that there is certainty on the part of the investors, of the economic actors, that Europe is actually a reliable place of business. So I think it's not a question that can be responded in yes or no. It's a fairly...
All right, the S&P 500 is open. It's trading at 5,987. VIX is trading at 1745. Euro is trading at 1.14. Oil is trading at 63.89. BITO is trading at 21.21, almost 22. And the yen is trading at 143.07. Natural gas is trading at 3.74. UCO is trading at 21.99. Gush is at 20.85. And DRIP is trading at It's trading at 11 right now. BITO is just, yeah, I mean, it's just compared to yesterday, it went up, but it's still, Bitcoin's just not moving. It's just not moving. Okay, let me go back to the video here.
Regarding of it coming from the euro and the energy, and regardless of the outcome of the trade war. And second question, and I also wanted to ask about BBVA Sabadell merger, which is now being checked by the Spanish ministers. And even though it has the ECB's green light and the other one of the competition authorities, do you fear that political opposition to mergers could hamper the advances on the banking union? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you don't mind if I ask my colleague, Vice President and friend, Luis de Guindos, to address the latter part, and I would turn the floor over to you, and I'll come back to yours afterwards.
Well, thank you very much, President. Good afternoon to everyone. As you have said, we produced our report and we released our report. I think that it was almost 1 year ago. And now the antitrust authorities in Spain, they have given their opinion and the remedies that they have imposed for the deal. And now, according to the Spanish law, the government has the possibility to analyze the conditions imposed and, according to the general interest, to modify these conditions. As you can imagine, we can wait. We should wait until we have, a definitive opinion from the Spanish government. Otherwise, what we could be making is a sort of a speculation that I think that it doesn't make much sense in this moment of time.
Thank you, Vice President. And on your first question, I just want to remind you that our forecast is 2% inflation in 25, 1.6 in 26, 2% in 27. And our core inflation is even more stable than that. It's 2.4 in 25, 1.9 26, 1.9 27. Of course, you think, 1.6 in 26. That's exactly part of the assessment that has been produced by staff. And if you look at what other institutions have forecasted, it's at the very low end of the range for 2027. And that's also because they take into account most recent data available, not including Q1, because I think Q1 will give us some surprises. But if you compare headline inflation and core inflation, you can see exactly where the difference lies. And that is energy prices and the value of the euro. We also have inflation, both headline and core, returning to 2%, 1.9% for core in 2027. And the cuts of today, the 25 basis points cut, is deliberately taking care of that inflation path. So we are confident of the analysis of our staff on that basis. And as I said, we will do what is necessary in order to make sure that inflation stays at our 2% targets. Monetary policy will be appropriately determined on that basis. But as I said, we are very well positioned.
And the last question goes to Chelsea Delaunay of the Wall Street Journal. Chelsea, please. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm also going to ask about inflation. I mean, the narrative of the past several post-pandemic years is higher for longer, structurally higher inflation for all of these different reasons. And looking both at the core and the headline forecast and your expectation potentially for a structurally stronger euro, is that still the expectation, higher for longer for inflation and for rates? And then my second question is also about the euro. Whenever the euro goes up, people worry about how that's going to impact exporters and some of these export-dependent economies. And I'm curious if you think the Eurozone is strong enough now for a strong euro.
Is the Eurozone strong enough for a strong euro? That's your bottom line question of your second question, right? Well, you know, when I look around and reflect on the work that we have done in the last 6 years, we have a very solid labor market. Labor market where participation has, including most recently, increased, where we have been at rock bottom unemployment rate ever since the euro was created. The fears of recession that abundant only about a year ago have not materialized. We are forecasting a 0.9, 1.1, 1.3 with very limited revision to growth. The output gap closes at the end of our projection horizon. Wages have increased over the course of those years, particularly with a view to catching up with the lost purchasing power that citizens had suffered as a result of inflation. But it is now decelerating, just in line and in time, I would say, to deliver on our 2% medium-term target. The monetary policy is transmitting quite smoothly to the economy. Credit is up, could be further and higher up, but credit is up. Rates are transmitting, including to corporates and mortgages. So I would say that the economy is responding quite well to our monetary policy and is delivering on that front. I would add, as I did in response to one of your colleagues earlier, that more needs to be done. And what we have seen, the Vice President and I, when participating in the finance ministers' meetings in Brussels, whether it's ECOFIN or Eurogroup, or on the occasion of Pascal Donoghue, the president of the Eurogroup, when he had dinner with us a couple of nights ago, we perceive a serious momentum to improve, to change, to simplify, to streamline, and to encourage and lock in, well, not lock in, but welcome capital into Europe. And we are seeing it. You know, the reverse Yankee bonds, significant increase that we have seen in the last few weeks is a clear indication that there is trust in our system. The capital flow that we are seeing as well, whether it is European investment returning to Europe or a bit of non-European investment coming to Europe, all that is an indication that at least market forces, investors, those who move real money around, actually see value and have confidence in Europe. So that would be my answer to your second question. I'm not sure what you meant by higher for longer, because I think I have gone out of my way to say that we are in a good place and we are well positioned now, and that we will be assessing meeting by meeting on the basis of data, what, if any, needs to be done in terms of appropriate monetary policy to return us to the 2% medium-term target. So I think that really sort of brings together the discussions that we've had over the last 2 days. And with that, I wish you a happy day, happy summer for those of you who live early, and see you soon.
The next press conference is on the 24th of July. So up until then, all the best. Thank you.
All right, that was EC President Christine Lagarde speaking in Frankfurt as the central bank cuts rates for the 8th time this year. It hasn't been 9 times. If you don't remember that it was 9 times, that's because it wasn't 9 times. This is Open Interest. I'm Matt Miller alongside Katie Greifeld. You know why I say that, right?
Because President Trump truthed it the other day.
And Ferris Bueller.
And I actually did not catch that part of the reference, but the ECB cutting rates as predicted. Shall we talk about the U.S. equity market, which has been open for about 10 minutes here?
Yeah, and
giving up our gains, down about 1/10 of a percent when it comes to the S&P 500, even though we got some very interesting news when it comes to the trade negotiation stance between the U.S. and China, Matt.
Yeah, I was also going to say relatively close to a bull market. I didn't notice that we turned back down.
Yeah.
If we rise to 59.79, and of course we had hit that level for a while yesterday, we would be at 20% up from the lowest level. So we could still make it today, but we kind of retreated yesterday. So now on a closing basis, we're up 19.8% from the lows in February.
You did see the NASDAQ 100 manage to close in the green yesterday, which was interesting. The overall index faded, but tech held up. And a lot of the future direction could be determined for the tech index. Tonight, we have Broadcom earnings and a few others. But for right now, it sort of feels like a holding pattern.
Right, it does. Although I think it's interesting to look at rates. We're pretty low right now at 4.35 on the 10-year. The news you're talking about that hasn't moved markets.
President Trump, and then it didn't.
President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping reportedly actually had a phone call. The U.S. president has been begging the Chinese president to call him for months. And so now I guess it's actually happened. Let's get the latest from Bloomberg Washington correspondent Tyler Kendall at the White House. So who called whom?
Well, Matt, we actually, according to China, they are saying that this was at the request of President Trump, which does track with what has been a long-held position by this White House, that they would like to see these two leaders hop on the phone directly. Now, we are still waiting on formal confirmation from the White House, but this.
Okay. Thank you for watching. This is Dr. Paul Cottrell. And we are doing a live stream on Rumble, YouTube, my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And a lot is going on in the news. We had ECB cutting rates to 25 basis points. They are saying they're getting to the end of their easing cycle. There's huge movements in the currency market. Dollar is weakening. There was lots of fluctuation during the data release, also the economic data release that we'll be going over later, plus this President Xi with Trump call. So again, in terms of equities, the accelerant to get past the 600, to get past the resistance level of 6,000 for the S&P 500, we are going to need positive results coming from the White House on tariff negotiations and out of the legislative body dealing with taxes. So those are two major sticking points for getting the equity market higher. The equity market is trading at 5,968. It is trading lower than when it went in the open. VIX is still stabilized at 17.82. Euro's trading at 1.14. Oil's trading at 63.84. I have been saying that I think the new range is around 62 handle to about a 64 handle. So we're near that top level. It may go more. There's big moves in oil today and big moves in natural gas, but it moves so much that I think it's going to mean revert. So what I did was I shorted natural gas and shorted oil. So I'm going to see how this evolves. If I start seeing additional price appreciation in the futures market, then I will start hedging my strategy. Now, BITO is trading at 21.15, and the USD Japanese yen is trading at 142.98. So there's a weakening of the dollar. That dollar weakness may be driving up oil prices, but major resistance level for oil at 65. That's for sure. What else are we looking at here? Natural gas is trading at 3.72. I think the trading range for natural gas is anywhere from 3.5 to 3.7. So I think we're on the high end of that. So that's what I'm seeing right now. So let's take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is trading, I think it was at 105. What is it? Bitcoin's trading at 105.4. And we have the yields. The 30-year yield is trading at 4.8 and the 10-year yield is trading at 4.3. So let's listen in on on Bloomberg. But before we do that, please help support my work by making sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm giving you what I'm doing. All right. Same thing with how I handle my health and, how to slow down the aging process. I tell you how I do it and you can follow along. I tell you what I'm seeing in the market and you can follow along. It's up to you. All right. So please help support my work by making sure you subscribe to all the channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all those channels. I do the live streams on Rumble, YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you'd like to support my work, either if you're domestic or international, please donate on Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. And you can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. By being a paid member to my Patreon channel or donating, you're helping support this free coverage that I do. I have thousands of videos out there for free, informing you on my perspective of what's going on in the news. All right, so please help support my work by donating and being a paid member. I don't put stuff behind a paywall, so please help through that. For the domestic audience, if you also would like to purchase the products on my store, please do. I have ebooks, I have supplements. I also have coursework that I built up where you can learn about immunology and pulmonology. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And I will be re-releasing this broadcast through premiering later today. So let's listen back to Bloomberg.
No, we're still, as a House, we're still calling for U.S. over international. That's partially a function of the better earnings revisions breadth picture in the U.S. versus international. And it's also about the dollar. Our forecast is for 91 on the DXY, which represents around a 17% move from the highs. And that will be really beneficial for multinational companies' earnings in the U.S.
17% move down.
Yeah.
From the highs, yeah. Yeah.
All right, we got to leave it there. Unfortunately, Michelle, really great to speak with you. Hope we can do it again soon. That is Morgan Stanley's Michelle Weaver. Meanwhile, let's get a check on this market, which is taking a bit of a leg lower in the first 18 minutes of the trade. I want to take a look at the breakdown right now. When you look at the single stock level, we started out, again, in the green, but now you can see that the breadth is getting worse and worse. You have over 300 companies in the red right now, just about 174, 75 in the green. What's still leading, and this is good news, is some of your big tech names, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, the list goes on, but very small moves overall. So that downside starting to overwhelm here because right at the top, Tesla down almost 6%. That's taking 6 points off the big index. NVIDIA too hurting as well. Then you have the likes of Costco and Eli Lilly. Let's take a look at how this is translating into the sector picture as well, because up at the top, you do have communication services, but a small move. Again, energy and materials also fighting to stay green right now. Then you go down the bottom and you absolutely have more red than green today. Financials, consumer discretionary, and consumer staples, Matt, some of the biggest slaggards in this market right now.
All right, let's shift gears here for a moment and talk.
Now, if you listen to what she said, she was like, energy is having a hard time keeping the gains that they did in the pre-market session. And that's the reason why I'm shorting. I'm shorting natural gas and oil right now.
Trying to replace them with artificial intelligence. He spoke last night at the Bloomberg Tech Conference in San Francisco.
I expect we will grow from our current engineering base even into next year. I just view this as making engineers dramatically more productive, getting a lot of the mundane aspects out of what they do, allowing them to spend on higher value-added tasks. People will be able to do more, which means maybe we'll create new products, and hence we will need more people, at least in the near term.
Joining us now is Bloomberg Intelligence Global Head.
I think there is a fallacy assuming that if you can make something faster, that doesn't mean that you have more product, because there may be an S curve. How much can a family absorb, or a corporation absorb, and do they really need that software? Steve Jobs said a long time ago, Apple could go a lot faster than what they are in terms of product development and introducing revolutionary products, but there are constraints. The product absorption within the society, part of that is cognitively being able to absorb it, realizing that you may need it for your life. But another part is just financially being able to absorb the technology into your life, meaning, can you afford to purchase it? So it hits a barrier. There's a resistance to certain types of technology and adoption. Part of it's psychological. Part of it is fatigue. Part of it is the buyer behavior is focused on something else. Or it could be just financial constraints. So I'm not so sure that just because you can make it faster and with less people, that people will actually buy it.
So talk us through what you're expecting when we hear from this company after the bell.
Yeah, look, we saw NVIDIA grew 70% despite the China headwind, and they wrote down, quite almost like 7% of their revenue that they couldn't sell to China. Broadcom has a very high exposure to Google. Almost 50% of their AI revenue comes from Google TPUs. And Broadcom is a much lower run rate, $18 billion business as opposed to NVIDIA, which is almost close to $200 billion on the AI side. So clearly there's a lot of runway for Broadcom, and Broadcom last earnings mentioned they added 2 new hyperscalers. Now those 2 could be OpenAI and probably Meta or someone else, maybe they are exposed to Project Target. We don't know exactly, but clearly they are gaining more customers who are thinking about moving out of NVIDIA's ecosystem and doing more custom ASICs. So from that standpoint, I think any new customer they add will add, probably 10 billion plus in revenue down the line for Broadcom. And it is somewhat of a zero-sum game to my mind. If you're moving away from NVIDIA, you're probably coming to Broadcom. All right.
Yeah, there you have it. And hopefully we'll be able to name those big customers.
So early in the session, I said, because the equity, the equity futures for the S&P 500 in pre-open session was moving towards 6,000. After seeing the open and the steady decline here, what's going to happen is that we're going to be probably down for the day and then stabilize. We're going to probably stabilize at probably the 5,940 mark or 60 mark for the rest of the day. We'll see, but that's my guess right now. And then they're going to wait for tomorrow for the news, and then markets are going to go wild. And everyone's keeping their powder dry.
Merchandise and a color wave in stores. So we do think that this quarter will shape out to be in line with their guidance, which is for a 6 to 7% increase. The one thing
I don't care about Lululemon. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. All this stuff that I'm doing is for free for you guys. Why? Because I believe you take charge of your life, all right? And there are too many people out there that are manipulating you, all right? They're super wealthy. And it's really important to just go, okay, you need to take charge of your health. You need to take charge of your finances, and don't be a victim. We have a society that is going to be becoming more divided between the haves and the have-nots. There's this new phrase out there that I actually like the phrase, the haves and the have-yachts, all right? Now, most people, if they don't pay attention, the rich are going to take advantage of you. And on top of it, a lot of people are dumbed down because of the cell phones, and they just got their heads stuck in their doom feed, and you're going to get taken advantage of. Now, you listen to me, you're going to be okay. So let me explain the protocol that I do for my own health and wellness, and you follow me each day, and I'll give you my perspective on how to navigate through these tumultuous times. If you paid attention, you would have earned approximately about 10 to 25% on new deployed capital in the S&P 500, and even more if you did it leverage. But but you can do it any way you want. I'm just saying that when you start to see fear, you need to go in terms of markets. You need to go in. Don't be afraid. You need to go in. You get reverse psychology here. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. Very high quality that I use every day. So I have a great structural nano silver soap. You can get it in charcoal tea tree. You can get it in lemongrass. You can also get it in lavender and peppermint. Lavender. I'm sorry, that's peppermint. And this is the lavender. So please go to my store, get a couple bars for your household, very high quality soaps that I use, way better than that garbage that you may be getting at the grocery store from Procter & Gamble. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work I do. All these videos are for free. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Also, I have a great toothpaste that will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce gum inflammation, and help the health of your gum line. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this toothpaste. It is literally the best toothpaste that you can get. It has no fluoride. It's a toothpaste that I use every day. Get a couple tubes of this toothpaste for your household. Help support my work. Get a few other items. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All right, Bloomberg is on a break. And because they are on a break, let's go to other videos. All right, so let's listen to GB News talk. I think they're talking about Trump imposes travel ban.
The Convention on Refugees that prevents refound.
I might have to recycle here.
Growing your business shouldn't mean growing your overhead. Growth should be seamless with AI-driven workflows built
on demand. Good luck. GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, you can, but no one likes a snitch. And I think office politics are often hard enough and enough of a minefield without getting involved. I think you have to leave it to the management.
You may have missed the live. Yeah, live.
I think trust in the process. Don't stick your nose in, because everyone always shoots the messenger. And in my experience, whenever I have flagged anything, it has normally turned around and bitten me rather nastily. So I wouldn't be getting involved.
But everybody suffers, Steve. That's my point of view. We're all being dragged down by these people who aren't pulling their weight.
Oh, I say bring on the snitch, whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, of course, you know, I go to work to earn my money. I don't go to work to earn your money. And coming back to the point the other contributor makes, you know, if the manager is a good manager, and let's say they are, then they'll obviously keep it confidential as well. The other thing we have to remember is that if someone is not pulling their weight, it builds up resentment. It builds up frustration
we're going to go to CNN
and
here.
irritation. The other thing
Unfortunately, we missed the segment that I wanted to play. CNN is playing Ukraine's MP slams Trump's response to Putin's call as disgraceful.
Forward with his 3-year assault on Ukraine. A new study reveals a significant number of soldiers injured or killed. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, there have been nearly 1 million Russian casualties, with nearly half as much for Ukraine. All of this as Russian forces advance further, as we told you yesterday, broke it down by Nick Robertson, into Ukraine's Sumy region. My next guest is Ukrainian Parliament member Kira Rudik, who's here with me in London. Kira, great to have you back on the show. Look, you heard both our correspondents there. Let me start with your reaction to this call between President Putin and President Trump, and words like Nick said that painted in many ways Putin as a victim.
Hello, Isa, and thank you so much for having me here. When I read President Trump's statement, I was just asking one question. Did the leader of the democratic world just give a blessing for Putin's another attack on Ukraine? And I'm just like, this is so absurd, and this is so disgraceful for everyone who is fighting right now, but also for everyone who is watching. And the question is, why are they not more afraid? What Russia can do if Ukraine fails? By the way, we don't plan to fail. Yeah. We will continue fighting. We are not going to capitulate. But right now, trying to swap the table and paint Russia as a victim and Ukraine as an aggressor, I'm just like, is it not clear by this moment who is an aggressor and that Ukraine is defending itself? It's like, does President of the United States want to ally with Russia? Because it just doesn't seem right. None of that seems right. And the worst thing, Isa, is that people from the front line will be giving calls and asking the question of what's going on. And there is no good answer to explain to them what is happening and why is the president of the United States is saying what he's saying.
And I bumped into you upstairs just before you came down, and I could see how really visibly angry you were with those words.
Because it's not just some words, because it's basically my life, my relative's life, my neighbor's life is at stake. Every next missile, every next drone attack could be the final one for someone, for people that I love, for me personally. And this is why I'm angry, because if it was in some parallel world and we were just discussing some people, it would be one thing, but it is very real. In Ukraine, everything is very real.
I mean, Nick was saying, our diplomatic editor, you heard him there, Kira, talking about the mixed messaging we're getting from this administration. It's not the first time I've heard it. But, you know, does this sound like a president who is ready to impose sanctions on Russia? Because only 2 weeks ago, I think he said, well, give me 2 weeks to figure it out. Does this sound like a president who's prepared to put a red line, who's prepared to portray some, give Russia some stick? Because that does not sound like that to me.
It's another painful matter, Isa, because we have done everything by the book. We have done things that we said that we would never do. We have voted for this rare minerals deal, just giving away our rare minerals. President Zelensky has come to Istanbul, something that he said that he would never do, never negotiate with Putin. We have gone through everything, agreed to a 30-day ceasefire. So President Trump seemed to put pressure on Ukraine, but we have not seen him putting any kind of pressure on Russia. And it's not even mixed messages. It's a very straightforward message, which says, I will negotiate with aggressor and I will put pressure on the victim. It is not leading us anywhere right now because there has not been any single fact that would prove that Putin wants to end the war. Because you know what these facts would be? He would just stop attacking us or he would come to negotiating table. So this illusion that you can agree with Putin on something just exists in the White House right now, alone perhaps somewhere else in Kremlin. And this is why it is so painful, because we are losing time, we are losing people, we are losing the ability to get support from the United States. And it just seems such a bad message to all the world, to all the other aggressors who are clearly watching that they can start a full-scale aggression, commit all kinds of the war crimes, and then they can delay and play around. President Trump looks very weak right now because he didn't get anything from Putin as of right now for what he wanted from him, anything.
Where then does this leave any sort of negotiations? As you heard me saying there, Pete Hegseth wasn't there, the US Defense Secretary wasn't in these talks. You know, Ukraine Defense Minister was there, along with 50 others or so, clearly standing united with Ukraine in terms of Europeans. But what is the message the United States is giving, and where does that leave any sort of ceasefire negotiations? Because, you know, Ukraine has showed up at every single meeting.
Yeah, we have done everything. So I think we need to come back to Munich Security Conference when J.D. Vance was very clear saying that Europe needs to take care of its own security by itself.
Yeah.
So this is where we're going.
Do you think this is where it's going? Do you think the US is going to pull out of this?
Well, let's look at the facts. Yeah. If in 2 weeks or 3 weeks we will get additional package of the military support from US, then I will be wrong. But right now, we don't know if that's going to happen.
This is what Putin wants, Kira.
Yeah, that's right. And this is why I'm asking why are people not afraid more of what's going to happen? Because again, coming back to the ceasefire question, again, the question is not answered. What will make sure, or who will make sure that Putin will keep his part of the bargain, even if there is a ceasefire? Because since 2014, Isa, we have been in so many ceasefires with them, and it never worked. It led us to the situation when Russia launched full-scale invasion. The only thing that worked for us for the last 11 years was to fight back. And this is what we are doing, and this is what we intend to do. We didn't say we want a negotiation and we believe in ceasefire. This was an illusion coming from the White House. And right now, this illusion is just breaking down.
Breaking down, Ukraine, though, has been fighting back quite ferociously, showing that it still has cards to play. Kira, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much indeed.
Smartsheet has revolutionized the way that I work, and I just can't see a day without it.
All right, we're going to go back to Bloomberg, but just to remind the audience here, please help support my work by making sure you go to my store and get the great products that I have. I'm going to tell you throughout this transmission and how to improve your health and wellness. We're going to go back to Bloomberg here. Now the S&P 500 is trading at 5,960 right now. VIX is trading at 1798. Oil is trading at 63.79 and natural gas is trading at 3.685. I've been watching this very closely here.
And Trump, don't know what they said, but that confidence seems to have wavered and evaporated right now. S&P 500, 10 points lower. That's down about 0.2%. 59.59 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average 107 points lower. The Nasdaq 100 right now down 15 points. Lots of data today. You heard that companies stocking up on stuff ahead of the tariffs, front loading. That could be over. The trade deficit narrowing in April to the smallest since 2023. And then earlier we had applications for unemployment benefits unexpectedly rising last week to the highest since October. And of course, this comes ahead of the non-farm payrolls report. Get that at 8:30 Wall Street time tomorrow. Broadcom, they report after the close of regular trading. Those shares ahead of that, they were a little changed, but the price has surged, making it the 7th most valuable company in the S&P 500 with a market value of $1.23 trillion. So it could be a lot riding on the results that come after the close today. And we check the markets for you all day long right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Alex and Paul. So nice to have you in the studio.
Yeah. We came back. We decided we'd come back for you.
I missed you.
So I know it's lonely here without us, right?
Yeah, my Acela experience was fine both ways. Just a lovely way to drop.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's just it feels long though.
But if you're going to pay as much as airfare for a train, why not
but the
fly?
train, you just walk. You go right to Penn
There's no
Station. You walk on the
TSA.
train.
There's no security. It's like it's a different kind of stress. I'm with Paul on this one. I'm sorry, but you and Mike can fly, and Paul and I will take the train. All right, Alex Steele alongside Paul Sweeney. We are joined now by Bloomberg's Christina Aquino to look at some of those stocks on the move today. All right, let's kick it off with Dollar Tree.
Yeah, let's take a look at Dollar Tree. I mean, those shares gaining more than 4% now, extending those opening gains. And, you know, we did get that discount retailer warning investors that its second quarter profit could be down as much as 50% from a year ago as it deals with tariff-related costs. But then today, we have JP Morgan upgrading it to overweight from neutral. And analysts are actually...
Yeah, we're going to go over to Citibank. They're talking about the debanking days are done at Citibank. So let's just listen in there.
And the debanking days, done. Citibank announcing it is ending its restrictions on providing banking services to retail clients selling firearms. This reverses a 2018 policy that restricted services for businesses that sell guns to people under 21 years of age.
Who also happen to be adults. Citibank saying in a statement, quote, "We will no longer have a specific policy as it relates to firearms." Citibank was among the major banks, multiple major banks, accused of debanking and included Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and JP Morgan.
With us now, Unleash Prosperity Senior Fellow and Heritage Foundation Chief Economist E.J. Antoni. E.J., it's a bit of an admission by Citibank that they came out publicly and said that first this policy. What do you make of it?
Well, Dagan, what have they been up to? Whatever the Biden administration was telling them to do. Essentially, we just had 4 years of regulatory overreach in which the federal government was browbeating all of these financial institutions into trying to conform with their own leftist ideology. In other words, if you don't put in these measures that will restrict carbon, that will restrict firearm sales, restrict, you name it, the donations to conservative organizations, any of those things, the Biden administration essentially was putting these banks into a regulatory box where the only way out was to conform, again, to whatever kind of leftist ideology the Biden administration was pushing. This whole debanking phenomenon is very real. It's very Orwellian, too. And just because it is done through regulatory maneuvers as opposed to something that's put into statute, that doesn't make it any less real to all of the people who couldn't get loans or who lost banking services more broadly.
You know, EJ, trust is a big thing, and I'm a verify, then trust. I don't want to trust and verify with these banks. What have they actually done now, and what should we watch out for to see if they slide it in some way?
Well, you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on all of these institutions because, as you just pointed out, there are ways to slide these different requirements in. So, again, it's just going to take a lot of oversight as time goes on. But I actually have a lot of confidence that these banks, with someone like President Trump in charge, that these banks are, in fact, going to move away from this liberal agenda because it's just not profitable. Look, it's not profitable to deny, for example, a fossil fuel company, money to build a new refinery or to build a pipeline or to build a rail line so that we can transport coal from a mine to a power plant, et cetera. All of these different ventures, the banks only chose not to finance them, or the banks chose to essentially debank these individuals specifically because regulators were forcing them to do so. They would not have done so but for government overreach.
It has started Operation Choke Point, Obama-era Department of Justice working with the FDIC, going after payday lenders and, firearms dealers. And under Biden, they also shut down crypto firms, destroyed whole families intentionally. Biden and his financial regulators, it's foul, disgusting what they did to entrepreneurs in this country and tried to hide it. EJ, moving on to this, President Trump ramping up the pressure on old Jay Powell to cut interest rates, which he still refuses to do. Writing on Truth Social, quote, ADP number out, too late. Powell must now lower the rate. He is unbelievable. Europe has lowered 9 times. Not one rate cut this year yet, EJ and Tony, but they cut 3 times last year. Political favor for Kamala Harris even before the election. But now you look at longer term rates, the 2-year and the 10-year, they're lower. Longer term rates are lower than the overnight lending rate now. And inflation is the lowest in 4 years.
Right, Dagan? I mean, look, even if you want to use the Keynesian models of the Fed, which I think are completely erroneous, but even if you want to just stick with the Fed's own methodology, that is telling the Fed that it is time to cut. You know, Slow Jerome, essentially, he was so quick to cut interest rates, as you pointed out, right before the election, when the inflation numbers were worse than they are today. The inflation outlook was worse, except they did it for political convenience. Now, fast forward to today, the only thing that has really changed is that you have a president who's a Republican instead of a Democrat. But other than that, all of the indicators, again, that the Fed themselves likes to look at, whether it's the labor market, whether it's GDP, whether it's the inflation numbers, you name it, all of their own indicators that they say they pay attention to are more in favor of a cut today than they were last fall. So again, I think it's very difficult to say there's any motivation here other than political. It's certainly not economical.
Yeah, he's certainly not talking to the Atlanta Fed or anyone else out there who's showing the numbers different. The conditions were there. We've talked about this before back in December with that cut. Right now, do you think the Feds will the individual Feds, Atlanta, Denver, whoever, will put more pressure on Powell because he's not going anywhere?
You know, unfortunately, because of the way the Fed is set up today, there's really very little that those individual regional banks can do to put pressure on the board here in D.C. You know, the Fed today is a far cry from what it was when it was first set up in the 1910s. So unfortunately, no matter how much those different regional Fed bank presidents, again, try to pressure Powell, at the end of the day, the power is here in Washington. And that's a very, very unfortunate thing.
And thank you, EJ, for that stat about the borrowing and the Treasury replenishing its account when the debt ceiling goes up. $38 trillion national debt by September. That's all you, my friend, EJ and Tony. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, EJ.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
The future of performance.
We're going to go back to Bloomberg here.
Check their margins, and part of it is they're probably testing the waters. We saw in the last inflation, when it started, people were raising prices more than their costs were going up because they hadn't been able to raise prices in years. And so they were taking advantage of it. And maybe that's a little bit of what we're seeing now. There have been some studies out recently that suggest that when Trump announced the tariffs, people raised some prices. Then when he put the 90-day hold on it, they didn't lower those prices. So businesses are maybe not anxious to test whether they lose market share, but they're willing to do it if they think that things are going to continue in that direction.
All right. Mike, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Economics and Policy Correspondent. Also, I lost my kid. So if you say, oh no, she's back.
Yeah, she's back.
I didn't know she was back.
She's
I was like,
right
can you go get my
She's
daughter
snuck
for me?
in.
Who's running around the office? Never mind.
No.
Oh, she snuck in very quietly. Look at that. All right, Mike, thanks a lot. Really appreciate that. And then, of course, Jobs Friday tomorrow going to be quite interesting. We typically wind up seeing actually the S&P up on Jobs Day. Tariffs over at the desk made a really good chart on that. So we'll see if that holds.
I'll tell you how important tomorrow's Jobs Day is. I'm coming in tomorrow.
Yeah, that's because it's raining. I don't think this is actually like a really good indicator. It's because it's like I'm gonna save my.
The Jobs Day tomorrow is going to be market moving. I think we're probably going to start seeing the markets dying down at about maybe 12 o'clock, and then everyone's going to be waiting for tomorrow.
Also, apparently there was a talk between President Trump and President Xi, according to Chinese reports. So we will discuss the latest on that. This is Bloomberg.
All right, so we're going to play a video here from the Hill talking about Putin warns Trump in phone call. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I have. I have these great deodorants that are dual purpose. You use it as a deodorant every day. It's for males and females, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, no aluminum, no baking soda, all natural ingredients, very high quality. Again, it's used as a deodorant, and it will help to detoxify your body. You can get it in citrus, and also in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. So please go to my store, get a couple bars for your household, use discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Our job is to create a series of
President Trump said his phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday brought both good news and bad news.
Trump took to Truth Social and wrote in part, "It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace." President Putin did say very strongly that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. The two also discussed Iran. Trump continued, "I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a weapon. And on this, I believe that we were in agreement." President Putin suggested he will participate in the discussion and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a wrap.
Criticized Trump on X, writing, quote, "Russia has been receiving drones and ballistic missiles from Iran to use in its kidnapping of Ukraine. Iran and Russia are partners. It is ludicrous to think we would allow Putin to be a chief negotiator between the U.S. and Iran on the Iran deal in exchange for the U.S. helping Russia with Ukraine."
Senator Lindsey Graham, meanwhile, wrote, "I have always believed that Donald Trump is the best person, maybe the only person who can end the war between Russia and Ukraine honorably and justly. I appreciate the fact that President Trump has gone the extra mile by engaging Putin in a positive way to try to get him to come to the table. I have always supported this approach, but to make peace, you have to have willing partners." I don't think Nikki Haley knows what she's talking about, and she would like to see an all-out confrontation with Iran. She's been agitating for it her entire professional career. I think avoiding that larger conflagration
is the #1 and most paramount goal of foreign policy. So if Vladimir Putin can play a role in not having all-out war with Iran, that's a good thing to me.
Trump said a lot of stuff on Truth Social yesterday about his conversation with Vladimir Putin. But what he didn't say is what stuck out to me the most. I'm really trying to understand how you sit on the phone with somebody who's a dictator for 75 minutes and say, oh, we had good and bad news. The conversation was okay. He didn't scream at any point and say, no, Vladimir, stop. Do not attack Ukraine.
Because he's an adult.
Yeah, no.
Just scream, don't attack Ukraine.
I thought
we're all doing that. It doesn't do anything.
I said, no, it's not. It's problematic to greenlight a dictator. And that's what it looks like to the rest of the world, that we're saying, go ahead. We understand you have to retaliate. No, we need to condemn retaliatory threats, especially when they're coming from Russia, because Ukraine attacked military aircraft, not civilians. And Russia's killing civilians. Ukraine is just defending themselves after an aggressor came in and try to take over their country. And so we're supposed to be supporting Ukraine in this and saying, listen, this needs to stop. But by egging, Putin on and not saying anything and saying, oh, good and bad news came out of this, that is not the same strength in the great negotiator that everyone thought they were getting and voted for on the campaign trail that said this would be stopped immediately and that he was the only one that can do it. I think everybody's watching this play out and watching now this being their third conversation. They had one a couple weeks ago. They had one in February. And then he's bombing Ukraine right after that and saying, oh, the U.S. has no backbone. They're not going to do anything. They're going to continue to cower and not only say Ukraine should accept all the terms of Russia's suggestion that they laid out on the table, which is very biased, but they should also allow Ukraine to be the key negotiator in anything that has to do with Iran, which is ridiculous.
If thunderous denunciation of Vladimir Putin was going to end this war, then it would have ended during the Joe Biden presidency, as we remained committed to, looking tough and strong and reminding the international community that Putin's a bad guy and we don't like what Russia's doing. That doesn't work. It's not helpful. We need a little bit more thoughtful and sophisticated engagement with Vladimir Putin. Doesn't mean he's a good guy.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead. Do whatever you like. That's fine. I understand. While at the same time condemning Ukraine?
We have to have it's a little bit more complicated than just good guys and bad guys. And we just yell about bad guys and we go to war with bad guys. The world is a complicated place. And there's a lot of regimes and countries that we don't like everything they do, but we ally with them sometimes because they're bigger guys we don't like, and the situation changes and it's messy, and that's the reality of global politics. My goal is to bring the conflict to an end, to stop the loss of life of both Russians and, of course, the thousands and thousands of Ukrainians who are dying. I hope there is anyone left alive in Ukraine by the time this war is over. The war will only end with a peace settlement that is maximally favorable to Russia, because Russia is slowly conquering the country, and the Biden approach of just supplying Ukraine with any weapons it needs to fight back is just resulting in the slow conquest of the country. Now, you did not hear me complain about Ukraine doing this military exercise and defending itself, because unlike some people on the right, I don't take the position that Ukraine has no position to defend itself. Of course they can defend themselves. They are entitled to defend themselves. Any nation that is attacked can defend itself. That's fine. We are not we should offer them moral support. We are not obligated to support them militarily. Our role should be to facilitate diplomacy, and that's what Trump is trying to do. It's a difficult thing to do because of the position Joe Biden put him in vis-a-vis the previous foreign policy.
The blame game, everything is on Joe Biden. We understand, we hear you, but I think it's time to have a real conversation about where America used to be. Democrats and Republicans used to stand firm against anti-democratic aggression, which this is, that Vladimir Putin is doing to Ukraine. And there used to be a uniformity in our government that says we wouldn't allow this type of...
Should we say to Iran,
we would just, no, at least change
go to hell, we're going to blow you up if you try to develop a nuclear weapon, and then we actually have to do it?
No, we should change the tone around Putin and stop making it an equal thing between what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, and we should talk to them very firmly and say that we are going to continue to support Ukraine until this becomes a stalemate, because nobody wants a nuclear war. So I don't also think that Russia's actually thinking about pressing the big red button, and neither do I think Trump is. And so I don't think that Russia wants to continue to stay in this war and spend all their money either. And just like I don't think Ukraine wants to continue to fight and let people die and have a much weaker military force than Russia. So at some point, both of them have to come to the table. Two Chinese nationals are charged with smuggling a dangerous biological pathogen into the U.S. with the ability to cause devastating diseases in our crops. We'll discuss next.
Are you getting the runaround from workers' comp after your work injury? You're not alone. A lot of injured workers are stuck in a system that's confusing, frustrating, and honestly just plain unfair. Maybe your job rushed you back too soon. Maybe your doctor doesn't
as to who is kind of holding what narrative. We know that on the side of China that they had actually indicated that President Trump had initiated the call. So there's some interesting things going on there in terms of which narrative do we want to have, who started it, who reached out first. So now we're waiting to hear how President Trump describes it, and of course hoping for as much detail as possible as to, what they talked about and really what that means going forward when it comes to trade. Of course, we have spoken on our side, sources have been telling us, that there are a number of countries on the table. Officials have been coming out publicly as well. Some are saying India, and there's been some talk about the EU. But for all of them, China is really, really important, and so this could really be the next step in figuring out what comes next with regard to trade between the two countries.
What are the sticking points? I mean, there are a lot, but what's the main sticking point at this time?
Right. I mean, there's, as you mentioned, so many things. There's a lot with minerals. That's something that we are still trying to get a little bit more info out of. Some things that there have been more kind of hostile relations just in the past few days, of course, with what's been going on with the president in terms of his immigration agenda. Most recently, putting out this statement that foreign students, from China being one of the groups impacted with regard to this student visa ban. As you know, on the immigration front, which is where the focus of most of my reporting, there has really been kind of a ramping up on the kind of education front. Of course, Harvard taking being the main kind of target from the president and really trying to bring back or kind of restrict the number of foreign students coming in as we see a rise in these instances tied to anti-Semitism. And of course, now last night, we have this travel ban, which has an additional dozen or so countries on it. And that, again, is really the kind of latest step in terms of the president's immigration agenda.
Adriana, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Adriana Lowenkron, White House reporter for Bloomberg News. We will look for some confirmation from the White House on whether the President Trump and President Xi did in fact hold that call. And we get that, we will bring that to you. Let's get back to these markets here. We want to check in with Nancy Daoud, private wealth advisor, Ameriprise Financial. It's interesting, Nancy, we've had almost a full retracement in the S&P 500 from the sell-off earlier this year, due in part to some of the rollouts of those tariffs. What's the conversation like with your clients today? Are they just kind of whipsawed? What do they want to talk about?
Well, it really is the realization, or maybe I should put it more like it's a desensitization at this point, because at first when on Liberation Day, when everything was rolled out, it was a shock to the system. There's a very big change here, and human behavior doesn't respond well to change. Even when we know it's a good thing, but we don't really know if it's a good or a bad thing at this point, but it's still a change. And at this point, because the pattern has become somewhat predictable, where there's something crazy that happens or a very big announcement that turns the world upside down, usually through social media, then there's a pullback with a negotiation period, which allows investors or the market to breathe a little bit. And then there's the actual negotiation. So it's kind of like the Trump tariffs three-step process that has now almost become predictable. So investors are feeling a little more comfortable with it. And of course, it doesn't hurt that the S&P is back almost up to its all-time highs again.
Well, to that point, actually, Charlie McGillicott over at Nomura had a really interesting quote. He said something along the lines of like, if you had bought by the dip, betting against the S&P futures every time President Donald Trump escalated trade rhetoric and then buying them back 5 days later would have yielded you 12% versus flat for the broader S&P since the beginning of February, like to your exact point. Okay.
If you were following me for the last 7 weeks, you would have earned 10 to about 25%, depending on your entry point and how you were dollar cost average. It's very simple. Don't bet against America. If you just have that simple rule, don't bet against the United States with the broader index. All right. And that it's going to be moving up. There's just such inertia with the U.S. economy that yes, there's going to be, down cycles and all this, but that's when you want to accumulate. So when you're gaining yield when the up cycle comes back. I mean, that's pretty much how Warren Buffett does it. Now he dives into more, at the individual company level. He's more of a fundamental trader or investor, I should say. But yeah, there was too many people that ran for the hills when this was happening.
2026. The jobs, we don't know what the report will say tomorrow, but it looks pretty solid. And the consumer balance sheets and spending is still pretty solid. So
Nancy,
that's the data.
Yeah, and Nancy, it's interesting that Alex and I just spent the past couple of days at a wealth manager conference, and I think we were both surprised that when we talk about portfolios, alternatives make up a much bigger part than maybe we had originally thought. How do you position alternatives investments, whether it's private equity, private credit, hedge funds, that kind of thing, for your clients?
Well, alternatives absolutely have a place in every portfolio to the tune of at least 10 to 20%, depending on the portfolio and the risk involved. And the most important reason is because alternatives, by definition, are not correlated to stocks and bonds. So when all hell breaks loose, so to speak, those will prevail, hopefully. So it definitely has a place in everybody's portfolio, but it just depends on the time frame for the investment and the appetite for risk of the investor.
What do you think about, say, gold, for example, right? Like it's not a typical alternative, right? But it has been a real stalwart in this environment. Do you think, are you recommending clients to sort of increase that exposure?
Not necessarily gold specifically, but in general, commodities, there's a small amount of percentage of each portfolio that should have some commodities, again, just as a hedge, but not specifically gold.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Nancy Daoud, private wealth advisor for Ameriprise Financial. And again, I just kind of go back to what we learned over the last couple of days at PNC. These people are talking about derivative alternative investments in a pretty big way.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember there was something that said 50% was
Yeah.
like some allocation. I was like, oh my gosh, for some of the big guys.
Well, I was shocked when I first got down to the Duke board to find out how much is allocated there. And that's kind of the Yale model where they go 50%, something like that. I was like, really?
I mean, you just have to then think like, are the risks well known? Like, are you knowledgeably exchanging liquidity for yield? And if that's the case, then that's great, right? I mean, as long as everyone is on the same page, is understanding what you're giving up and what you're getting at the same time. Here's what I'm going to be getting. I'm going to be getting a conversation in power. Oh, yes. We heard the Meta and Constellation Energy deal the other day. That was a big deal for nuclear power. Meta Platforms also announced a deal today to get green credits from a U.S. solar energy project. We are going to talk to the company behind that project. The founder and CEO of Invenergy will be joining us, Mike Polsky, coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer. This is a product that is a dual purpose. It's going to help with your immune system and your brain function. So get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc boosts up that immune system, but also magnesium helps with brain function. Super important. In addition, magnesium increases the efficacy of D3, vitamin D3. So please go to my store and get the magnesium and zinc. Make sure you take it every day and boost up that immune system and your brain function. Now, let's talk about a foundational supplement that's important to add to your protocol, and that is the multivitamin. This multivitamin is easy to digest, and it has the multivitamins that you need for for enzymatic activity. Enzymes, many of them, need cofactors. And some of those cofactors are vitamins, so taking a multivitamin is going to give you the cofactors that you need for that enzymatic activity. And so when those enzymes are functioning more and functioning properly, then your cellular processes are going to function properly. So that's really important at the cellular level and at the tissue level. So if your tissues are performing better, then your organ systems are going to perform better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this multivitamin as a foundational part of a health protocol. So go to my store, get this multivitamin. It's easy to digest. Now, another part of that foundational health protocol is the probiotic. Now, I have two types of probiotics. You can get it in the veggie cap, which is what's in my hand, or in the powdered form. I take the powdered form because I take a lot of different powdered supplements like the collagen and the lignans and the gladiator barley and the boomer boost. So it's easier for me to take the powdered version. But either way, take the veggie cap or the powdered version. Both are very high quality probiotics. Now with taking a probiotic, what's going to happen is that you're going to notice your skin's going to be better. It's going to be healthier. What you'll also notice is that you'll be less irritable and you'll have better concentration. And then at the gut level, you're going to start seeing that you're digesting your food better, you're absorbing your nutrients better, you're bringing down GI inflammation, you're boosting up that immune system in that area. Your mucosal lining is actually going to be thicker and healthier. And so your IgA will have higher concentrations. And your overall digestive health is going to improve. The communication between your gut and your liver is going to improve, and your gut and your brain. So please go to my store and get the probiotic. I have it in the veggie cap version and the powdered version. And like I said, that's your foundational stack, part of your stack, and then you add to it. So get the probiotic and the multivitamin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Now, if you're an international watcher, unfortunately, I don't ship internationally. But if you would like to help support my work, you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee, or be a paid member to my Patreon channel. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Now, let me do a market update here. The S&P 500 is trading at 5,968. VIX is trading at 1770. Euro is trading at 114. Oil is trading at 63.74. BITO is trading at 20.93. Japanese yen is trading at 143.39. Natural gas is trading at 3.652. Now, what I would like to bring up with oil is that oil seems to be trading at the high end of a range. And I think that new range is around with a 62 handle with a 64 handle. And right now it's at a 63.72. So I'm looking, at this pretty closely, and I placed a short in the oil market, and also I shorted natural gas. I think the natural gas trading range is around 3.5 to 3.7. It's trading at 3.64.
It's this Bloomberg Business Flash. Right now, the major averages kind of mixed. The NASDAQ 100 just turned positive, up 25 points, up 0.1%. The S&P 500, 6 points lower. That's down 0.1%, 59.64 on the index. And the Dow is 69 points lower. So we're getting some headlines, a little more detail on that phone call between President Xi Jinping of China and President Trump this morning, which was initially reported by the Xinhua news agency. So here's the headline. Xi tells Trump U.S. should remove negative measures on China. You know, take that for what it's worth. Added attention on the non-farm payrolls report. That's out tomorrow morning after applications for U.S. unemployment benefits unexpectedly rose to the highest since October. That points to cooling. Initial claims increasing by 8,000 to 247,000. Multiple large companies, this includes Microsoft, Walt Disney, and Booz Allen Hamilton Holding, have recently said they're cutting jobs. Planet Labs, that is popping off the screen. A record jump this morning. The company's first quarter revenue topping expectations. Those shares right now, Planet Labs, 60% higher in this morning's trading. Kimberly-Clark forming a joint venture with a Brazilian pulp supplier. Kimberly-Clark selling a majority stake in their global Kleenex and tissue business. This is outside of North America. And starting today, this is one that gets my blood boiling. Customers across the country can order stuff from 1,500 Five Below stores through Uber Eats app and then have them delivered directly to. Now, the whole idea of going to Five Below is to save money on these little items, and then you pay Uber apps to have it
that's why you're
delivered.
spending the money, because you're then paying Uber apps.
I just want to let me just put it out there. If this happens at my house, I'm going to have a stroke, and you know who I'm talking to.
Yes.
Anyway, we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash, Alex and Paul.
All right. Thanks so much, John Tucker. Alex Steele here alongside Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. We're broadcasting to you live from our interactive broker studio right here in Midtown Manhattan. Also check us out on YouTube as well. So the news that came out on Tuesday was that Meta and Constellation Energy met what they call a virtual purchase power agreement. So it's basically an investment to secure clean energy from Constellation, but there are lots of different nuances to that. They're not the only one out there. Today we also learned that, back in December, Meta Platforms also announced a deal to buy green credits from 4 large U.S. solar energy projects. And the owner of that project joins us now. Michael Polsky is founder and CEO of Invenergy. And Invenergy is one of the biggest, largest independent power producers in the United States, nat gas plants, solar, onshore, offshore wind, storage, as well as transmission, really has his pulse on the market right now. Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. And we have to add natural gas as well.
Yes, no, I said that. I said natural gas. I did. Plants. So you have all that clean stuff. How hard is it to reach these agreements with the hyperscalers right now? What are those conversations like?
You know, obviously, these are large-scale agreements, so it's not easy to just walk in and these are those big deals. So, first of all, we have to make sure that both sides, so that we agree on that, suppliers have sufficient supplies and satisfy buyer requirements. Is what is also important that certain reliability standards are being met, and most importantly, the pricing has to be appropriate for a buyer to agree to buy this.
Another headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. President Trump agreed to start new round of talks ASAP. That's according to CCTV. We'll bring you continued reporting on that. Michael, is the Trump administration making your business, the development of your business, the expansion of your business easier, more difficult? No real impact yet? What have you seen?
Clearly, the administration sent very right sign. President announced energy emergency, which I believe there is an energy emergency because we have to build, there is increased demand and we have to build more supplies, and more supplies we have to build. If we build like we used to do it, it would take too long. Emergency is possible. What is also very important, not just supply, but transmission. I mean, one of our biggest developments right now
with our templates, market
more transmission lines. I always like to say that, if we build more trucks without roads, not going to deliver goods. So in order for electrons to move, we need transmission lines. And if we have transmission, then we can shorten time to interconnect facility. We have to be able to move power from where it's produced to where it's used. And I think we can really build infrastructure a lot faster here and with a lot more impact.
Devine, to your point, Goldman Sachs had a note out today talking about how power is already tight in the Northeast. There was a report out yesterday that said the development of data centers to the largest U.S. grid in PG cost $10 billion because we just can't reimagining transmission?
I think there are multiple. One is obviously permitting, because it takes forever permit, and
fixed now. Has that all been fixed?
I mean, it's in the process. Obviously, there are good announcements with implemented, because implementation is very important. But it's not just permitting. I think transmission has to be appropriately paid for. And right now, particularly for long distance transmission, we don't have a methodology in this country how to pay for transmission. So there's a lot of, intention to build, and the only really transmission being built, the one that recovered by utilities or RTOs through the ratepayer. The moment you touch something that is not typically normal, then it's very difficult. So we have to really come up with appropriate methodology to value transmission and allocate the cost of transmission. I think, in my opinion, for this administration, for Department of Energy, that should be really one of the most important tests to build our infrastructure.
I did read the book.
Here it is.
I did read the book, The Grid. So it took me a whole summer to get through it, and it was not an easy read, but I think I have some understanding of it. What's your sense overall of the power grid in the United States? How good is it? How bad is it? How much investment does it need?
Obviously, there are a lot of discussions about the grid right now. They're being used like antiquated, old, not reliable, which is true in many ways, because most of our grid has been built 30, 40 years ago. And there are a lot of change since then. I mean, for example, we used to have very centralized way of generating electricity from very large coal, nuclear, sometimes gas power plants. Now we have a lot more decentralized generation, number one. Another issue is that our weather pattern has changed. I mean, now we have a lot more, inclement weather. We have ice storms, which we've seen in Texas. We have floods. We have other weather events, which shows that generation itself is susceptible. We cannot make 100% sort of guaranteed generation. So how to deal with this? We have to connect, I like to call larger geography. So power can move from here to there, just like roads, right? If we only go from here to there on one road, and then something happened with that road, and we cannot avoid that, then all the traffic will be stopped for days. We can't avoid this. So we have to have transmission. But
based on that, you said the sort of financing the transmission is key. How would that work? I get it for the regulated utilities, but if you want a transmission line across multiple states, how could the financing work to make sense for an independent player like you?
This is a fundamental problem here, right? We in the United States, we talk about the reliability, we talk about national security, but for example, we develop a large transmission line, and which dramatically increase reliability. But then you go to the RTOs like MISO and ask them to value reliability, and they just don't value this because neither they know how to do it, or they simply don't want to do it. So this is a fundamental problem that, when you build transmission, for example, in our case, Grain Belt Express, it's $11 billion project. We have to have revenues in order to finance this. And if nobody wants to pay for anything, it's really hard. So I think it should be a priority for the government to really establish revenue streams for transmission.
All right, so let's take a look at some other news that's going on here. GOP rep draws parallels between Cold War and the U.S.-China relations. We'll listen to that. But before we do, protecting your neurons are extremely important when you get age 40. So if you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking the stack. Really important, extremely important. All right. Now, I think because of modern society and some of the things that have happened in recent years, there's going to be more people that have cognitive decline. All right. Part of it's because of cell phone use. Part of it is society is going to be more reliant on AI and they're not thinking. We're in do mode and not really think mode. And a lot of people aren't learning new things. So it's really important as a holistic approach to make sure you detoxify your environment and stay away from overuse of technology, especially cell phones, and do the proper supplementation and proper diet and exercise. So in terms of the supplementation, you want to get the NAD+. NAD+ is a supplement that will boost up your NAD+ levels, and NAD+ helps to repair DNA damage. In addition, it helps to protect neurons, and stack it with ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can purchase. So please go to my store and get this ubiquinol. And with ubiquinol, what's going to happen is it's going to soak up free radicals, help with the health of the mitochondria. You're going to have more energy, and it helps to protect neurons. So stack them together. Now, you can stack also NAD+ and ubiquinol with resveratrol, C60, clarity factor. These are all very powerful stacks to help with your neurological system. Also, vitamin B is very important. So you can stack the vitamin B complex with ubiquinol and NAD+. And these are things that I take every day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get those supplements, follow the holistic approach, and slow down the aging process and improve different systems that you're targeting. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. So let's listen to this video on Fox Business.
Trump signing a new proclamation banning travel from more than 12 countries deemed national security risks and public safety threats. This list includes Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia, Libya, Yemen, all labeled as very high risk due to terrorist activity and weak or hostile governments. Venezuela, Cuba, and Laos all facing partial restrictions. The president also suspending any foreign student entering the country looking to study at Harvard. Joining me now is Kentucky Congressman Brett Guthrie. He's the chairman of the Energy Commerce Committee. And Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here this morning. Before I get to the energy space, I want to get your thoughts on this travel ban from the president last night. Your reaction?
Well, I agree with that. I think that we have all of these incidents we're seeing here in the United States, just terrible tragedies. My heart is out to the families that have been affected by these terrorist acts in our country. And the president said he's going to protect the country from terrorists. You know, he's trying to deport the families of terrorists as well. So I agree with exactly what he's doing.
Well, I'm wondering, about China and whether or not the president needs to get tougher on travel to and from China, given the fact that Chinese researchers had this plot to smuggle a crop-killing fungus into America. The FBI says this is incredibly serious. How do you see it?
I see the same thing. I think we have to look at how we deal with China in everything that we do. We're looking at AI in our committee and how China's trying to dominate AI in the world. And I think China is our number one focus that we have to have. And so I strongly support anything we can do to ban that type of thing from China.
Well, I mean, look, the list is growing here. You've got a surveillance balloon a couple of years ago, surveilling American citizens. You've got intellectual property theft, COVID, fentanyl, and now an agro-terrorist product.
Well, just think if that country that you just described, who's done all of that, dominates the world platform for AI. That is actually what our committee's been focused on, other than the one big beautiful bill. The other big focus on our committee is how do we unleash American AI? And the biggest issue that you talk to people in the AI community, they say we have the brain power, we have the capital. Our biggest concern are we're going to have access to energy, and are we going to have access to a regulatory system that allows us to compete and allows us to win? And it absolutely is a geopolitical issue. I don't think I'm too strong. I went to West Point, so in the 1980s, I don't think it's equivalent to when the Soviet Union and the battle for Western Europe in the Cold War. That's where we are with China now, and we need to take it that serious.
Well, I guess the next question becomes, are we not funding it, right? I mean, look at all the Chinese stocks that are traded on U.S. exchanges. I've done several specials on this for Fox Nation called Underwriting the Enemy. And, as an elected official, do you need to do more in terms of taking those companies out of the U.S. exchanges, pulling some economic levers here to stop China? Because are we not funding all of this?
Well, I strongly support anything we can do to stop China. So that specifically, I don't have the knowledge right now to give you the exact answer on that, but anything on China, what we're focused on, we do know that they are trying to dominate the world with AI.
Yeah.
And so we are struggling to make sure that we, in our committee, to try to get a bipartisan agreement, because if energy policy changes every 2 to 4 years, then it's difficult for Americans to invest and to grow our energy. And so we're trying to find that pathway forward, because we know that if the delta between what China energy growth and our energy growth is just astronomical, and that's going to absolutely affect our ability to compete.
Well, that is the reason that President Trump has all hands on deck when it comes to energy, including investment in nuclear. Before we move on, I want to get your take on the debt limit. But before we move on, let me show you the conversation between the woman who was at the University of Michigan and her boyfriend. The boyfriend, Lee, says, where did the seeds get put? In the tube? Jean, who's the student from Michigan, says, I put them in my Martin boots in a small bag, the Ziploc bag, very small. Lee says, that's good. Just put it in your shoes. Jean says, I stuffed them in the shoes. They continue this conversation, the couple. Lee says, Teacher Lang's seeds must be placed well. So the teacher gave them the seeds to bring here, it sounds like. Jean says, where to put it? I only have one pair of shoes. The insole cannot be pulled off. Lee says, did you bring just one pair of shoes? Jean says, no, 3 pairs. I'm wearing 1 pair. I mean, this is a conversation, and this transcription, it was released by the FBI. This is just extraordinary. The hearing is going on today at 1 o'clock. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Michigan told Fox News that Jean is still in custody pending the hearing. The public defender is currently representing her, though she's trying to retain private counsel. Do you have any expectations for this hearing today?
Well, I certainly have expectations that the Trump administration and the Trump Justice Department is going to take full action. That's something we haven't seen in the past 4 years. We have to, this absolutely is one big piece of the puzzle that we put together to say China is a direct threat to us. And we have, as you talked about investment earlier, companies invested in China, China investing here. We have to realize that we can't continue to do that. Right. We have to define the situation as it is, and we have to take every action that we can. And I don't want to keep repeating, but could you imagine if the country you just described dominated the world platform for AI? We actually had a hearing the other day. There was a medical device made in China implanted in a person that had a URL code back to the University of Beijing. So if anything that we have coming from China, we have to take as seriously as that situation you just described.
Wow. Well, look, President Trump is going to speak with Xi Jinping this week. I hope one of the leading points of their discussion is this, and these unending efforts to undermine and undo America by the Chinese Communist Party. I hope the president has that on his list to talk with Xi Jinping, in addition to the trade issues, which I suspect.
We are living in interesting times. I think Trump's attack on Harvard and some of the other universities is going right to the heart of the matter. It's not so much the anti-Semitism. That's a sideshow. What's really going on is the infiltration of the CCP in our institutions. All right, let's go to Bloomberg here.
Trump loving culture warriors. So there you go.
All right. For our listeners in the U.S., here's a reminder. You can listen to us via satellite radio on Sirius XM channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio.
All right. They're going on a commercial break, so we'll do another video. But before we do that, let's talk about that vitamin B complex. All right. Vitamin B complex will help with your mitochondrial health. The first 4 B vitamins helps with mitochondrial health. It will boost up those ATP levels so you'll have energy. If you notice that people, they get older, their energy levels go down, their mitochondrial health goes down, their neurons start to go down, the firing of the neurons start to go down, their concentration goes down, they have atrophy, their bone density goes down. So there's ways to mitigate all these issues, all right? So let's just talk about the energy boosting part of this. So vitamin B complex should be taken if you're 40 years of age or older to improve the health of your mitochondria and get those mitochondria boosting up those ATPs in all the different tissues, including your neurons. You're going to have more energy. That's really important. Now, it also helps with cellular metabolism. And the B12 vitamin is going to help with protecting neurons. So please follow my advice. Take the vitamin B complex every day, drink it with filtered water, do resistance training, cardio, balancing exercises, and stretching exercises. Those are all 4 modalities are important for your body in general, but also for your brain. Cardio is good for your brain because you're getting better blood flow. And you are activating those baroreceptors and chemoreceptors, all right, that helps to control the blood pressure. In addition, by doing stretching exercises and balancing exercises, you're activating the cerebellum, really important. And you're training your body to be balanced. In the kinematics, that's important. In addition, stretching activates the neurons that are attached at the ends of the muscle. While you're doing the resistance training and you're building muscle, but you're activating a different set of neurons that actually are doing the contraction. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin B complex, take it every day if you're 40 years of age or older, and apply the holistic approach to health. Proper diet, proper exercise, filter your water, stay away from processed foods, do the 4 modalities of exercise, get proper sleep, proper supplementation, learn new things. And if you apply this on a regular basis, you're actually holistically healing your body. All right? It's really simple. It's really simple. But if you go down the path of, having problems, chronic problems, then it's harder to get you back into homeostasis. It's easier to handle it before you have a problem than when you do have a problem. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
In modern times.
Patrick Fruzetti of Rose Advisors interviewed this morning on surveillance. Procter & Gamble plans to slash as many as 7,000 office jobs over the next.
Breaking news, Danish central bank cuts rate to 1.6 from 1.85. So Danish bank is lowering their reserve rate.
The Bloomberg News now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Let's take a look at some stocks on the move today. I'm Paul Sweeney with Alex Steele, and we're joined by Bloomberg's Isabel Lee. Isabel, what do you got?
Look at Chewy, ticker CHWY. So shares are flat now, around 0.9%. It was down pre-market, but I guess that they paired some of those losses. So we have Jefferies cutting the recommendation to hold. Jefferies said that valuation appears prime for a first quarter beat and that a raise is unlikely to happen. They also said that the pet macro looks relatively stable and Chewy's performing well, but the CFO change underway is a little concerning. So in May, recall that Chewy announced that its CFO, David Reeder, will depart in several months, and as he really comes to lead a semiconductor company called Entegris. So some in Wall Streets were really disappointed that he left. So this is one of those examples that, you're sad to see a leader go.
True, but aren't we like so invest in your face and invest in your pets? Like, aren't those the two things?
That's what I thought.
I'm about to learn that.
Oh, he's getting a puppy. Oh my
First
God.
pet in my entire life.
What breed?
Australian Labradoodle.
Oh my gosh.
The pictures of the
Very
puppy
cute.
is like to die for. Okay, Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree. So ticker is DLTR. Shares are rising more than 7%. And that's after JP Morgan upgraded the stock to overweight. So the move comes again in the wake of the company's results when it warned about the impacts of tariffs. We have JP Morgan analysts saying it sees a lot of positives in the results. So Dollar Tree shouldn't be confused with Dollar General. We have Dollar Tree warning investors that its second quarter profit could be down as much as 50% this year. And that's in contrast to Dollar General, which reported really good earnings. So Dollar General generates around 80% of its sales from food and consumer goods, but Dollar Tree gets just half of its revenue from those categories. Anyway, it was just interesting to me that these two dollar stores really have this huge disparity. And it just makes you realize that there's really a lot under the hood when it comes to these companies.
And rounding it out, Planet Labs.
This one, the ticker is PL. I had to take a double look.
What is Planet Labs again?
It's an Earth imaging company. And I had to take a double look because shares are up almost 60%. That's a record jump. So company's first revenue quarter topped expectations We have Citizens analysts saying that the company had a stellar quarter and the stock remains an opportunity for long-term capital appreciation. So it's interesting because this comes as Europe hikes defense spending in response to a pullback from the US. And we have the CEO, Will Marshall, saying that European demand for satellite data is higher now than it was during the onset of the Ukraine war. So with the change dynamics in the US, the CEO said that they're trying to pick up more of that capability themselves. So good for them because they're going to be producing probably a lot of imaging. Their earnings, including some items, were $1.2 million this quarter. And that's after analysts were expecting a $3 million loss. So,
all right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Isabel Lee joining us from Bloomberg News. For more conversations just like this, subscribe to our new Stock Movers reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports and the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen. And also Deep Tease, the Spire Global CEO, will be joining us. They provide space-based data and analytics and space services, and they also take a look at Earth and oceans and atmosphere to help companies make data-driven decisions. So we'll kind of stay within that realm. We also want to figure out what's happening in D.C. You had a social media post from President Trump talking about his readout from the President Xi and President Trump's call. Maybe I didn't say that right. But anyway, he talked about the call that they had together. Tyler Kendall is joining us outside the White House. What did he say? What do we know?
Yeah, hey, Alex. Well, President Trump said that the call lasted a little over an hour and a half and said that it resulted in a, quote, positive conclusion for both countries. Importantly, he said that moving forward, he doesn't think there's going to be any questions around rare earth products. As you all know, the U.S. had been accusing China of slow walking these export licenses when it comes to critical and rare earth minerals that really are essential to U.S. supply chains, alleging that China had violated the terms reached when they had negotiated in Geneva. In fact, I actually caught up with the Deputy Treasury Secretary Michael Falkender earlier this week, who told me that this was the issue that he thought would ultimately mean that these leaders were eventually going to have to get on the phone and talk about. President Trump also said that there would be another round of in-person talks like we saw in Geneva. He said that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and USTR Jamieson Greer would lead them, as well as Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. That would be a new addition to the team. He was not there at the talks in Geneva, but a pretty remarkable development to think about how our reporting has really indicated, Paul and Alex, that China would really much prefer for key advisors to iron out the issues before putting Xi Jinping on the phone call. And there were definitely some key issues that they needed to talk about today.
But as it relates to those rare earths, the U.S. president did not specify whether Beijing had agreed to speed export licenses, did he? Is that something that's just too complex at this point?
So we're still awaiting further details. We have to put into context that the Truth Social post was rather vague, but President Trump himself said that he doesn't think that there are going to be questions moving forward here. Of course, it's a very complex process and has been something that has been top of mind for the United States during these talks and really has become sort of a pressure point moving forward, since we know our analysts at Bloomberg Economics tell us that 30 out of 50 minerals that are deemed critical to the U.S. come primarily from China. So they really do have such a big market share when it comes to these critical minerals that the U.S. ends up relying on.
All right, very good. We appreciate that. We're just getting some more reporting there from Washington, D.C. as it relates to some of those talks, which I guess are inconclusive, but I guess it's just good news that
I think just the fact that they literally are talking.
Yes.
It's probably a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. All right, Tyler, thanks a lot. Tyler Kendall, Bloomberg Television, Washington correspondent, joining us on that call. Well, House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier joined Bloomberg to discuss key issues such as Elon Musk's vocal disagreement with the big, beautiful bill and the Speaker Johnson's fight to keep the $40,000 SALT cap and more. Bloomberg asked about the SALT cap that he's fighting to maintain. Here's part of that conversation.
I am crossing the Grand Canyon on a piece of dental floss, okay? The equilibrium that we reached here took quite a bit of time to get to where we are. And you can't...
It's hilarious. I love that.
That we negotiated carefully for over a year.
What is interesting
is very difficult for me.
Sometimes these senators or representatives, they say things that are so just funny, but gets to the heart of the matter so quickly. Like Kennedy also... Senator Kennedy, says things that are just like, it's so commonsensical but it's so funny too at the same time. All right, let's go to Gordon Chang on Fox News. Well, no, this is talking about, let's not do that because I don't want to strike on this channel. Let's not do that. It's really sad that because we're doing the live stream on YouTube, I got to be careful on what is said. Because I'll tell you, I've been nuked twice on YouTube. I lost, lost channels, and of course there's people that don't come back. But with that, please ask your social media to follow me because, DrPaulCottrell gets strikes on YouTube. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg here while I find another video.
Collins and Senator Murkowski are essentially trying to push back some of what the House has already done. Now, we have two polarizing forces trying to push the bill in a different direction, sort of challenging for Senator John Thune here. So I think what happens is you will see these negotiations continue to play out over the next week, maybe the next week and a half or 2 weeks, and then you'll get a clear picture of where the Senate's going to go. But this bill does have to change in order to get enough senators to pass over and support it in approval.
Okay, so what does SALT really look like? What is it going to be? 40,000? Is it going to be lower, or what we think?
So I think it's going to be either 40,000 or slightly lower than that, because I think what's going to happen here is, look, if I'm Representative Lawler, I really enjoyed that interview this morning with Speaker Johnson because he defended the cap and said, look, we negotiated this, it took a year. And the SALT caucus in the House does have a lot of power. They can say, look, we're just not going to vote for it. If you want to throw it back down to 10,000 Senate, feel free. I'm not going to vote for it, and it's not going to pass. But this idea of it's either going to be 40,000 or maybe slightly lower, because then the SALT caucus is in slightly a more difficult position because they did get something out of it. So for those of you in New York and New Jersey, I think you're going to get something. It's going to be around 40,000 or maybe just slightly under that.
Nathan, you mentioned Elon Musk. He has come out really harshly against this bill and on other topics. How much influence does he have now that he's no longer technically part of the Washington story?
So this is one of those things where it's starting to brew into an issue. I don't think it's an issue just yet. I mean, if you looked at Speaker Johnson's interview, he defended what they have been doing, and there's a lot of criticism on the congressional, the CBO at the moment in terms of that $2.4 trillion estimate of increasing the deficit. So if you ask the politicians up on Capitol Hill, I wouldn't say that there's really much there yet, but it could be coming because, like Elon Musk said on X yesterday, he's calling for individuals to call their senator and call their congressman and say, let's not support this. And there is a little bit of a group coming together. Senator Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson. That's enough votes that potentially could derail this bill. So if I'm Senator John Thune, I have to figure out how to get some of those individuals on board. And the answer is, well, maybe these tax cuts are permanent. Maybe they're just extended a certain amount of time. Or maybe this bill shrinks, or maybe the debt ceiling goes from a $5 trillion increase to a $2 trillion increase. There's the areas of flexibility here for leadership, and I think we're going to see that play out over the next few weeks. So we still think this bill is going to increase the deficit, but stay tuned because it may not be what the CBO just scored yesterday.
I think I asked you this before, but this is obviously what I'm interested in, and that's what happens to a lot of the energy tax credits, the ITC, from the IRA. And all the companies are kind of waiting on tenterhooks for what is going to happen. What's the indication that Republican senators are going to step up and try and fight for these tax credits?
So we've heard through the grapevine that, there are a lot of lobbyists up on Capitol Hill right now really pushing for this. And there are some receptive ears. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina is one of those individuals who's really focused on this. Now, I think you're going to start seeing snippets of what the Senate is thinking towards the end of this week, maybe the beginning of next week in terms of those tax credits. And we're telling our clients that, look, the House tax credits were somewhat positive and then initially negative on the solar industry in particular. And I think you are going to see some moderate voices coming through when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult for some of these Republicans, say Senator Tom Tillis, for example, that will vote to gut the Inflation Reduction Act when the Inflation Reduction Act is bringing jobs and plants and other types of economic growth to their states. So I do think you're going to see a moderation of what the House did. And I think we'll see some of those details coming out early next week.
Got a red headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. NATO adopts military buildup plans as part of new spending goals. We'll have some more reporting on that. So some movement there across the pond. Nathan, President Trump quite successfully kind of worked the phones in the House to get passage of the deal. It's a little bit different in the Senate where, these folks have 6-year terms here. What's the expectation of what kind of influence President Trump can play in this negotiation in the Senate.
Well, you hit it right on the head. I mean, obviously with the House of Representatives, they run every 2 years. And so the idea of a primary threat is much more serious to them. But when it comes to the Senate, I will say is that their primary goal is to make sure that the tax extensions, the tax increases don't happen by the end of the year. Senators know they have to pass something. The question on the Senate side is that what else are we going to do with this? So I think that President Trump will have to take a different type of approach in working with the Senate. One of those things like, look, this is America First policy. And even though only 1/3 of the Senate will be running approximately next year, the Republicans do want to remain control of both the House and the Senate, and failure to adopt something like that could put that at risk. So I do think President Trump will have a little bit more hands-on approach with the Senate. Obviously, he's going to have to manage both those who want to see the deficit decreased, along with the moderates who want to see how these pay-fors decreased. And I think they will be able to come up with a solution. It's just going to take a lot more work, and he's going to have to roll up his sleeves to do it.
All right, Nathan, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Nathan Dean joins us from Bloomberg Intelligence. He covers all of policy there for Bloomberg Intelligence, that senior policy analyst.
When we were down in D.C., I did have a little free time. You were working.
I was
we
working.
saw we went to Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Memorial, all the cool stuff. I had no even thought of coming. I'm going to go to Capitol Hill and see my representatives.
Oh, God, no.
So I got much more inspiration
Absolutely
from going to the
not.
Lincoln Memorial. Well, you go to Lincoln Memorial, you read the Gettysburg Address, and then you read his speech for the second inauguration. It just takes your breath away.
It really does.
It's just amazing.
You get that feeling in your stomach in like a good way. Yeah, I totally remember that as well. All right, coming up, we're going to break down the markets with Ann Maletti, head of equity investments. And
please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the stack here that's going to help with your bone density and your cardiovascular system. So vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor, very important. It also helps to absorb calcium. Vitamin D3 has a higher efficacy when you take magnesium in your diet or through supplementation. You can get magnesium on my store through the vitamin C magnesium, the magnesium and zinc supplement, or the Bloomer Boost. But taking vitamin D3 will also help to get cells to go into apoptosis if they need to go into apoptosis. By taking vitamin D3, you're absorbing that calcium, and by doing resistance training, you'll be able to build more bone density, especially when you're taking in calcium. I drink milk, but some people take calcium supplements. Now, vitamin K2, MK7, stacked with D3 will help you to absorb that calcium even more. Now, when you're doing that resistance training, that's going to help to build up that bone density. Super important to prevent osteopenia or osteoarthritis or osteoporosis. Now, there is a protocol that I should do a video on where you can reduce osteoarthritis. I used to have osteoarthritis from doing triathlons in my 20s and 30s, and I reversed it. And I'll do a video again. I've done it a long time ago, but I'll revisit that conversation, and I'll tell you what I did to reduce arthritis. So taking D3 and K2, what it'll do, it'll help to pull some of that calcium around plaque formation and reduce further plaque formation with the calcium depositing around the plaque formation. So it's going to reduce further formation of calcium depositing, but also help to slowly pull out what's already there. And there's a whole protocol I'll even talk about later where you can actually reduce plaque formation. Can't get it all out, but you can go from, let's say, 50 to 10, say 50% blockage to 10% blockage, or 60% blockage to 15% blockage. Takes time, but it can be done. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin K2 and the D3. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And you're helping support the work I do. All of this is for free. All these videos for free. So please help support the work by getting the products and donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. All right, let's